everyone, and welcome to today's lesson on solving equations with fractions. So we have all of the equations that we've solved kind of up to this point have just been using whole numbers. So the next thing that we're going to kind of get into is making sure that we understand how to also solve the equations that have fractions in them. So we're first going to start out by talking about the distributive property and what exactly that means. Okay, so we're going to start out by first talking about the distributive property. Now this is where you multiply the number outside the parentheses by each term inside the parentheses. So here are a couple of examples. Here I have the 3 on the outside of the parentheses multiplied by the x plus 8. Now, since x does not have a number in front of it, that number that's there is actually a 1. We know that 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 with an x, 3x. So 3 times 1x is 3x, and 3 times 8 is 24. Okay, now we're going to use that same thinking with the second example. I know that 2 times 7 is 14x, so because the 7 has an x next to it, when I write the 14, I'm also going to put an x next to it. And then the second number that's in here is 2 times 5, which is 10. So all we're doing in this distributive property is taking the number that's on the outside of the parentheses and multiplying it by all the numbers on the inside of the parentheses. If there's an x next to it, then you leave the x next to it. All right, so let's go ahead and move on and to see how the distributive property actually helps us solve equations that have fractions in them. Hey everyone, and welcome to our lesson on solving equations with fractions. I'm just gonna tilt my camera up just a little bit, scoot back so that you can see everything that's going on here on the board. Okay, so again, the title of this unit is solving equations with fractions. All right, so here is the method that we are going to be using for today. We're going to be using a method called the clear the fractions method. We are literally going to remove all of the fractions from this problem. Now, here's how we're going to do that. Step 1, pretty basic, two easy steps. Multiply by a multiple of the denominators. So I'm going to look at my denominators. My denominators are 2, 4, and 2. Well, I know that 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 1 is 4. That means that these denominators have the number 4 in common. So I'm going to put parentheses around the entire equation, and I'm going to multiply everything by the number 4, because that is the multiple that these denominators have in common. Now, remember we just talked about the distributive property. So the 4 is on the outside of the parentheses. I'm going to take that 4 and I'm going to multiply it by the first number, which is 3 over 2. You may be thinking, oh my gosh, my fraction skills are, they're not there. Maybe you forgot some things from when you were younger. Well, guess what? We have a handy dandy calculator this year. So if you're not sure how to do 4 times 3 over 2, you're going to type in 4 multiplied by 3 over 2. And you're going to click enter. And the calculator is going to do that multiplication for you. It's telling me that the answer is 6. Now, since this has an x next to it, I'm going to write 6x. And I'm going to keep distributing and keep typing into the calculator if I don't know what the answer is. So 4 times a fourth is 1. If you didn't know that 4 times a fourth is 1, you could very easily in your calculator write in 4 times 1 over 4. Bam, tells me the answer is 1. I'm going to put an equal sign in the middle because remember my equal sign, we keep everything lined up when we solve our equations. I'm going to do 4 times 2. You better not need a calculator for 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8x. I have one more number. I need to do 4 times a half. And when I do 4 times a half, it's giving me 2. So again, if you're not sure what it multiplies out to, then you do that in the calculator. So because I was really smart about what number I was picking to multiply with, my fractions have been cleared. I literally have an equation now that doesn't have any fractions in it. That's why this is called the clear the fractions method. So I multiply by a multiple of the denominators. Now I just have to solve, and I'm not going to really go into too much more than that because we just did a whole video on solving equations. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 6x on both sides. I'm going to move my x's. I get 1 is equal to 2x plus 2. Now I'm going to move my constants to the other side. That gives me negative 1 is equal to 2x. The last thing I'm going to do is divide by 2, and x is equal to negative 1/2. Now, I didn't say the answer couldn't be a fraction, but what we did in order to get to the end of this problem, we really didn't have to move around or didn't have to mess with a lot of fractions. We did this multiplication in the calculator at the beginning of the problem, and then we were done. So that's why I want you to continue practicing this method. This method is where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck as far as moving forward into Algebra 1 next year. All right, so let's go through one more example. All right, so let's keep it going. We're going to do this next example. Again, the method we're going to be using is this clear the fractions method. We are literally going to delete all the fractions from our problem. So to do that, I need to look at my denominators. I have 8, a 3, and a 3. So 8 and 3. Those are only really the numbers that I have. Well, I know that if I count by 8, 16, 24. I can count by 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, and magic number 24. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I'm still at school, so like I feel like I keep getting interrupted by the announcements. I'm just gonna talk until they stop talking. Okay, we're good. Okay, so like I said, I count by 3s, and I also get to 24. That means that 8 and 3 have the number 24 in common. I can multiply to get the number 24. So remember 8, 16, 24, and I could count by 3s also to get to 24. So I'm going to multiply absolutely everything by the number 24. So I'm going to start with 24 times 1/8, like we saw in the last problem. If you're not sure what that's equal to, handy dandy calculator will help you solve that. So 24, punch it in, times 1/8, it gives you 3 plus, now do you see this x? We remember in the notes on the distributive property, if a letter is by itself, then the number that's in front is a 1. So I multiplied 24 times 1/8, that gave me 3. 24 times 1, 24 with an x. 24 times 1/3, 24 times 1/3 is 8. 24 times 2/3, 24 times 2/3 is 16 with an x next to it. So again, we have found that magic number that will help me clear out the fractions. Now that I have my equation that doesn't have any fractions in it, well, now we're going to go into solving. I'm going to do minus 16x on both sides. That gives me 3 plus 8x is equal to 8. Minus 3, I'm going to move those constants over to the other side. 8x is equal to 5. All right, so now we're here. The last thing is divide by 8, and x is equal to 5/8. So, like I said, we're going to continue practicing this clear the fractions method. I want you, as you're going, I want to see your work, so make sure that you're keeping track of your work, everything that you're doing to arrive at your final answer, and send me in a copy of that when you've completed the assignment. Thanks for stopping by and watching the video. You guys have a good day.